Linux OTC. Welcome to episode 16. We're your hosts. I'm Bill.
I'm Eric.
I'm Majid.
I'm Leo.
Well, full cast crew today. Um, back
Norbert
from a.
split into
Well,
two
where's
people.
Norbert there?
No, he
Well,
split into two people.
I say full because it's filling up my entire window here.
Oh, all right, okay.
That's the only criteria I was going by. Norbert couldn't be with us. I'm not real sure why, so let's make something up. Hell, he's shitting through the eye of the needle again. How's that?
Why not?
Better than a
Um,
screen door.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe he's got COVID as well.
Oh, my.
Ah.
Well, then he's got no excuses because Leo is suffering with that. And he's here.
Oh
Yeah.
well, I've been suffering. I'm on the tail end of the suffering. So yeah. Oh, I hope I'm on the tail end of the suffering. We'll see how long this goes.
So
Yeah.
I have officially never had COVID. I work in a hospital. I work with COVID patients. I have never once tested
It's a
positive.
lie. It's a lie.
No, my theory is that I must have antibodies. I must have antibodies. That I've, maybe some exposure that, subclinical, whatever. Because as I said, I've tested many times and I have had coughs and colds and, it did kind of affect my self-esteem slightly that not even a global pandemic virus wanted to choose me.
Well,
So
doesn't it make sense that people working in healthcare professions might be, just because of the level at which you are exposed to these things, you might have above average immune system. I don't know. It makes sense in my little
Actually,
head.
is that a thing? I've always heard that, let your kids eat dirt and, be exposed to germs
Worked for
because
me,
it
by
builds their.
golly. Generation
Well, I mean,
X.
and me too, but I don't know, was that actually true? Like if you had, is there a study or something? I don't know.
Well, I mean, there isn't any studies, but it's one of these things that kind of does make sense to a point. It's like one of the reasons that allergies have become so much more common is it's thought of because people aren't exposed to as many germs when they're kids, and then when they get older, they have these kind of massive reactions to them.
Well, the way I see it, right, is that like if you lift a lot of weights, it doesn't mean that you're the hardest puncher in the world, but you probably punch harder than someone that doesn't lift weights at all. So eating dirt, lifting weights.
I mean, yeah. As I said, it's one of these things that you could never do a study on it because it's apart from the fact you'd never get ethical approval for
Yeah.
feeding dirt to
Listen,
kids.
kid, on these little goldfish, I've added a sprinkle of dirt, and then we're
Yeah.
gonna check you in a year.
Yeah, it's never going to happen. But I think, from a pathophysiological viewpoint, kind of makes sense, but only up to a point. It's not like if you literally live in a cesspit, I don't care how good your immune system is, you're going to catch something.
I was just going to say, is dirt commonly full of germs by itself? Or
Well,
Like
I
a-
mean, there's germs everywhere. I mean, there was a dentist I used to work with whose famous line was, the mouth is dirtier than the anus. When he came to
some are worse
bacteria.
than others.
Well, and that's a good point too, because I think the most dangerous microorganisms to us are from other people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that would make sense. So dirt in and of itself, there might be something in there that might make you sick, like make you want to get it out of your system, but I don't know necessarily. I mean, I grew up on a cattle farm, would run around barefoot all summer. And yeah, I'd get the occasional parasite or something like that just because, hey, that's what you're in for. Pink eye, that kind of thing. But no, I like you said, Bill, I mean, maybe that helped me. But then again, at 40, I developed leukemia. So, so I'm guessing it didn't help me too much, or at least it only helped me for a limited time.
Leukemia. is
Take
something.
that.
My dad caught leukemia in the 90s and then took a pill and it went away, and then it came back again. And he went up to the University of Chicago Hospital, which is apparently a huge medical training place, whatever, and had some kind of bone marrow transplant thing where they cultured his own cells and put them
Yeah.
back
Yep.
in. Took like a month, and that disease should have killed him, but it didn't. He lived on until 2018, where he passed away of old age. I heard a comedian once say, "You don't get the parents you want." stay alive. You got two parents. One of them's gonna die young, and the other one is never gonna die. They're just gonna linger. But yeah, that was.
But I'm sure you guys got along famously, right?
No. No,
No.
I put the effort in. He put the effort in, but we were two very conflicting personality types, and
It
Or,
happens.
or was it actually that you were both exactly the same, and that's why you
I'm
couldn't?
not hearing that. I'm not. I've had to
Because
hear
that's
that
often. You know,
Yeah.
Oh, but I mean, it is true. We just turn
Right.
into our parents. We do just turn
Oh,
into our
God.
parents.
All right, let's change the subject.
Look
This is
inward,
supposed to be
Bill.
Linux OTC. We're supposed to be talking about GNU/Linux. We're not supposed to be
sometimes I think I
psychoanalyzing Bill.
Sometimes I think I should have put the OTC part first.
Look inward, Bill. Just
Yeah, look inward, and you'll find God. Yeah.
Oh, you'll find your dad.
God.
I mean,
You're
that-
all dead to me.
yeah, I mean that's what Simba found in The Lion King. Remember? That's what Simba found in The Lion King
Yeah,
when he
my
went
dad-
racing and he looked into the thingy, and then it was Mufasa. Remember?
So comparing my dad to Mufasa is a rather stretched analogy, to say it kindly. But there you go.
Okay. Random fact: do you know who the voice of Mufasa was?
Yes.
Oh yeah, James Earl Jones.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. The same guy who's Darth Vader. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, it was Darth Vader. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Okay, so I didn't know if everybody knew that. Okay, fine.
Well,
Fine.
he was
All
on
right,
an
well.
episode of Big Bang Theory where Sheldon was following him around or something like
Darth
that.
Vader.
Well, James Earl Jones.
Oh, Mufasa.
Yeah, and James Earl Jones said, I was in more things besides Star Wars. I was in this and this and this, but you don't care about any of that, do you? And here's Sheldon. No.
Oh
But-
dear.
Oh yeah. Well, let's get into a little bit of. I'm kind of interested to see the back and forth we get here. In a continuation of not last week's episode. It's been about a month, hasn't it? August 13th, episode 15. We talked about bloat, and Leo was very opinionated about his take on bloat, and that which sparked a conversation on Discord between him and Eric, who we
You could have
Very
just
nice.
stopped at opinionated.
Yeah.
Leo is
Ve-
very
very-
opinionated.
A very nice discussion. I feel like it went well.
No, it was. It was.
It was.
It was.
and-
We actually had a very constructive discussion about using launchers instead of old school menus and how that gets you past what Leo was calling bloat. Now, my fundamental disagreement was that I'm just a little too OCD, and I know people throw that word around, and I apologize to anyone that actually suffers from that. But what I mean is that I do use menus, and unfortunately, if you use something like GNOME, where their overview is just let's just throw all the icons there. That could always, it's never going to go wrong, right? And give people no way to sort things, or the only thing you can really do is just. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. They fixed it. I forgot folders.
Well,
they
there was-
fixed
You
it.
can
That
have
came along
multiple
sometime.
folders.
Yeah.
The same
I mean-
way that you have in menus, and throw accessories in the accessories, and you throw.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Then you can make it
initially-
even more
Stuff.
complicated.
I remember actually the first iterations of GNOME Shell, the first GNOME 3, they did actually have like a tab bar on the side of all the different, applications, internet, software, whatever. But then they got rid of
That
it
was a
because
favorites bar. It's on the bottom now.
Yeah. Well, so my point being that if you have something like a distro that installs all the GNOME games, GNOME games, for example, that's like 15 different things that I have no interest in playing. So the bloat to me is I don't want those icons there because they complicate my access to the things that I actually do want. And so Leo was just so vehemently like, well, it's not bloat, and like you just leave it alone, and like he just kept going on, and I'm sitting here like
You
yelling at my
hide it.
phone like
So if it's there and you never see it because you don't touch the menu because you're using something like ULauncher or
Right.
Albert or KRunner or something like that, then it's like it's there, but you never even know it's there. I think like on the phones, for example, the thing that irritates me is when I've got an app I never use and it sends a push notification once a day or something like that, and I've got to go and do whatever I
No,
end up
now we
doing.
go scorched earth. Now it's over. Listen, don't talk to me. If
So-
you
Right.
can be there, I've had a Samsung device before. I can have the 8,000 apps there that you can't uninstall. It's a thing, I guess. But don't talk to me. Don't do that.
Right, just
Yeah.
make like a hole in the air, and you're not there, you don't exist, that kind of thing.
And I guess it just must be particular to the way that I use devices, because I do have shortcuts and I have favorites and all of that stuff, but there are still things that I don't use on a regular basis that I will legit forget the name of. It's been like, God, what is that? I know it does this thing, and it's some dumb, clever name because they thought they were funny, and like, what is
Oh,
it?
no,
And then I
that's
have to
just
go
open
into the
source.
Then GNOME is the desktop for you because they removed the names for everything. And,
Right, right, exactly. Files, that'll work out fine. You know, so yeah, I tend to have to dig into a menu system of some sort, and phone is a good example as well. If I have too many apps on my phone, it just drives me crazy. So yeah, for someone like me, and I have to assume that I am not not that big of a minority, but I do appreciate both sides of the argument. I do use a launcher, and I use it, all the time, like literally probably 95% of the time. And I don't have to look at the menu, which is why GNOME's overview isn't that annoying. If I had to go through that every single time, and I know you're going to say, oh, well, you can just hit the super key and start typing. Well, yeah, but that's like, it brings up a whole big screen, and then it's filtering as I'm typing, and it's ugly, and I don't like it. And so that's why a launcher is a better option. I'm using ULauncher. It's fine.
I think it comes down to workflow and what you're used to using. So, in one sense, I've been a little bit perplexed by the insistence that a lot of people have that, we need to have a menu button and a menu button press, like we used to with Windows 95. And in one sense, I'm a bit kind of like, do we need it, really? I mean, okay. So...
Well, Mac hasn't had one for a long time.
Yeah. So let me put it this way. Mac is a good. The Mac and the iOS is a good case study actually in this. In that, if you've been working with computers for a very long time and you have a particular muscle memory and you do things in a particular way, right? Then that's the way that you want to keep doing it. If on the other hand your computing journey started at a different point along that line, then you may not necessarily see the point of that. Or if you are at what I would say is probably now the majority, especially outside of the developed world, the majority of people's access to the internet and to computers is their mobile phones and their mobile devices. And so it is Android and iOS. And you see them having real difficulty when they actually have to use a laptop. It's all about what they're used to using. So, like, for even yesterday, my wife was trying to open a PowerPoint on her phone, and I was just like, you can just open your laptop and do this. She goes, no, I'm just used to doing it here.
Yeah.
Or like my brother-in-law, he was, doing his rota for the duty rota for the doctors at his hospital in India, and he was doing it on his phone. And I'm just like, wouldn't this be so much easier if you just opened your laptop on and just
you and I think that same way. My wife does the same thing. I'll see her, and I feel like she's struggling because I'm like, she's trying to zoom in on a screen. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at the school records. I'm doing something. I'm like, just go sit at your computer. She sees her computer now as basically an appliance. Like she sits down, she uses the programs that she uses to work and do her, tasks, whatever she needs to do. And she gets them and walks away. Now, admittedly, she is not a technical person by any stretch of the imagination, and she is so happy that I'm part of her life, because anytime she has a problem with anything, she's just like, here, fix this. With her phone, with her computer, whatever it is, her car, like, it doesn't matter, just fix this. And I can appreciate that perspective, but I agree with you where it's like that would be so much easier with a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor, and you could just get it all on the screen and
I go
get it
over this
done.
with the other guys
Yeah.
on Three Fat Truckers all the time because
Yeah.
like 99% of their interaction is on the mobile devices, and I'm trying to
And
explain how to do
yeah.
something. And when I get when I get my phone, and I got a decent sized phone, I got a big Note 10 Plus with a huge screen. But whenever I have to do anything important on it, I feel like chucking it out the window, and then.
So
backing
that's the
over.
part. That's my point. You see, my point is it's about workflow. It's about what we're used to. So when we started using computers and started using them regularly, and then getting involved into technology and all the other aspects, it was a time when you used a laptop or a desktop computer, and the operating system of the time, Windows or whatever, had that menu button kind of paradigm, and so that's kind of the way that those people think. When you get people, say for example, who are still techies, nerds as it were, but they're say significantly younger, in their 20s or whatever, then you see that they have a different workflow. I've seen them on Macs doing development and stuff like that, and it just annoys me. But and when I did get my
Oh,
first
I want to
Mac,
explore that. Why?
yeah.
Why does that irk you?
So it's because it's workflow. It's because it's not what I'm used to. So because in everybody's mind, the way that you do things, you think is the right way because that's the way you do it, right? So when you see people do things a different way, your first reaction to it is a bit of, well, they're doing it wrong. They're not doing it wrong. They're just doing it the way that they're used to doing it, the way that their mind and their muscle memory and whatever makes them want to do it. You can train yourself to do things differently, the Apple way, or actually I would say the GNOME way. It's interesting actually that it has now become the reason that I'm using a launcher on my Mint box at the minute is because I've used GNOME distros for so long that I've just got used to pressing the super key and typing Firefox, press, that's it, keep going. I've got into that now, right? GNOME has managed to mold me into that direction. Now, I reckon most people who use Mac or iOS have been molded to do things the Apple way. Like their way of installing applications. You download the DMG and then you move it from this file here to this folder here, and then it installs. To me that seems really clunky and stupid.
It is.
But
It is.
yeah,
Hold on,
but
wait. You would how? Hold on. So what's the alternative?
I'm not saying that there is an alternative. What I'm trying to say is that what people are comfortable with and what people like to do and behave with when it comes to their computers is dependent on their past experiences and where they started in that journey. Do you know what I mean?
I
It's like,
just saw Eric jump on that real fast.
yeah, no, I mean, it's so the point is, like, there's some people, right? One of the major draws that I've seen for some people to Linux is the fact. Sorry.
You're gonna want to see the YouTube version of this show, folks.
Yeah, is the fact that Linux has app stores. Yeah, and they're used to the idea of an app store because they have one on their smartphone.
But so are Apple users, though. I think a lot of Mac OS and especially iOS users are used to that paradigm. The same paradigm
Yeah.
that we have in Linux, that you don't have most Linux users getting into the command line to install applications.
Right.
They open up the store, they find Audacity, they click install, and then they run the
Yeah.
application. It is the
Which-
same workflow in Mac OS and iOS, and it's the same workflow now more and more in Windows.
In Windows. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, and
but even that is relatively new when it comes to Windows. Microsoft
Sure.
realized that, we need to have a store as well, and we need to monetize this. But it's still people, again, say maybe of a slightly older generation, like one of my cousins. If I ask him that he needs to download a new piece of software, he goes to the website and downloads an exe because that's what he's used to doing, and that's what he has done since time immemorial. And even though there's now a better way of doing it, even on Windows, he doesn't do it that way. Better, inverted commas, So it is all very subjective, right? I think,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of it is difficult to have. You can't be objective about stuff like this. These are tools, and everybody will prefer one tool to another tool. It's like, I was explaining this to one of the medical students the other day that, surgeons will, say, I want that stitch and I want that knife and I want that this or that, I want this, that. Why? It's because those are the tools that they're used to using to perform that procedure. And it could be very well done with another set of tools.
Yep.
But because that person isn't used to using those set of tools, he's going to say, no, that's the wrong way of doing it.
Yeah, I actually just had surgery, and I couldn't believe whenever they were talking about, oh yeah, well he uses this and he does it this way, and I'm like thinking, well, isn't there sort of a way that everybody does it? And they're like, no, everybody, he uses this specific type of clamp and tool and blah 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 and all this stuff, and we have to know him as a physician, as a surgeon, what his preferences are. So that we can assist him properly. And it's like, wow, but to go back to your point, so I was in software development for a long time, not a developer myself, but more in the sort of the management, product manager side of things. And I think this isn't going to be a surprise to anyone, but it is almost impossible to please everybody, right? And that's what I think the developer of a desktop environment, if you can imagine the monumental task of taking feedback from all of these different sources and all these different people. I mean, God, it comes down to even just like single click versus double click. The fact that KDE is changing.
Was always wrong. That was
well, it was always wrong. I agree with you. I'm with you too. I think single click made no sense whatsoever. They could tell me that I'm supposed to use that little checkbox or whatever. It never felt right because that's not how I used a computer. But the fact that they announce it as part of a like the fact that that's even an important detail tells you like how specific people's preferences are and how important the most minute thing in the, like, that is, who cares about single versus double click, but it's that important.
The KDE
and so
developers, for sure.
I was satisfied when they put that on the front page. They gave you a way to change that on the front page of the system settings. I was satisfied with that because I just kind of figured that was a design or
right, bubble
UX
up
experience.
right there. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why I've sometimes thought that actually, and this is actually going to be the opposite, I suppose. One of the things that everybody says about KD is that it's bloated, inverted commas.
Really
actually, but actually, all it does is just give you the option to use the computer in the way that you want to. I have managed in the past, and I'm not, it's not like I use KD all the time, but I have used KD for a time and then been able to make it look like Windows, make it act like Windows, or if I want, make it act like GNOME, or if I make it act like Mac OS, depending on how I felt I wanted to interact with the computer. Now, you could argue, why are you spending your time sorting that out when you should actually be doing some proper work and actually using the computer? But hey, we're Linux nerds and we like to tinker, and that's why we're kind of here, isn't it?
It's a virtual space, a desktop, but you have to look at it all the time. So I mean, that's the argument, right? I probably would not be as big a Linux user as I am today. Desktop Linux. I used it on the server. That's a completely different experience. But on the desktop, the choice, the freedom of choice, the ability for me to pick up that taskbar and put it wherever I want, or, all of those little tiny choices that I could make is exactly why when I'd go back to Windows, it would just be like, or Mac. Mac has no choices. Almost none.
I could not. So anybody who has been listening to my ramblings on mintCast will know that I've been trying. I feel like if has anybody watched read 1984, the novel, and there's the thing at the end of it where Winston looks at Big Brother and realizes that he does love Big Brother, right. And I thought to myself, you know what? Let's try this Mac. Let's try this Mac OS. Let's try this that everybody seems to think is fantastic, and the Apple way is brilliant, and blah 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 blah. And I barely lasted 24 hours on Mac OS before I was like, okay, let me try and put Arch on here. That was with my.
I think you're digging too deep. I don't think people think. Well, okay, there are some people that do, right? But
yeah.
I don't think the majority of people that are using Mac OS are like, oh wow, Mac OS is brilliant. No, I think what they think is, I can run my app on this, click, and then they're off.
Right.
Yeah, and that's and so anyway, the second Mac that I bought was the M1 MacBook Air, and I must say, when it comes to appliance style battery longevity, it was amazing. I charged the thing like once every 2 weeks.
Yep.
You know,
And that's the way you have to think about Mac. Is it is exactly that. It's an appliance. It's someone like my wife, who just, I mean, she doesn't use Mac because she was a Mac 9, OS 9 user before they went to 10. She did everything spatial, like that was Mac's party piece, and when they went to 10, they really alienated a lot of people. Anyway, but that's the way you have to think about a Mac. Is it's not, people are not technical at all, even in the slightest. They don't understand how any of it works. They don't have to. They don't care. They want to sit down, open the lid, and just start using it. And that's where Mac is absolutely flippin' brilliant. And they want it to talk to their watch or their phone or whatever the hell else, their TV. And that's what Apple has figured out that no one else can quite get in touch with, is that just people don't care.
Well,
They
they're-
couldn't
they're
care
the-
less.
They're the only company that works backwards. And
Yes.
It's amazing. They start with the user experience and work
Yep.
backwards. Nobody else does that. And I don't
Right.
know why, because if you're trying to attract users, it's how you have to start. When you start with the developer and work forward, you're going to end up with really clunky, ugly software, because developers are not always, sometimes they are, user experience designers.
Let's face it, user experience and UI design it's a art form and a voodoo and it's its own thing, and very, very few people are good at it. It's just true. I mean, I worked with a woman who was exceptional at it. She, was at Carnegie Mellon, and like just was one of those people who just could tear apart things. And you look at something every day, like Notepad in Windows, every day for 20 years, and you never even see what it really is. And then she would sit here and look at this, and look at this, and look, and you go, wow, you're right. And so that level of you have to, it's a whole different way of thinking. Like, so yeah, of course developers can't do it. Almost nobody can do it. So it's not fair to think that developers can, but you're absolutely right. You start from, what do you want to give someone who sits down in front of this, and then, go the other way.
Yeah.
So
And I think
So-
GNOME has tried to do this.
yeah, I was exactly going to say that.
This is why everybody in Linux, this is why loud people in Linux do not like GNOME, because they have attempted to try and whittle down the desktop, and everybody said, well, they're just taking away choice. Kinda, yeah, because there's too much. And if you want to just stick it in front of somebody and let them get to work,
Yep.
then that's what you have to do.
right. And you look at something like KD Plasma, which they've spent the last, 3 years or so, 4 years maybe, going through and cleaning up all these rough edges, right? And admittedly, it's much better today for that effort. That effort made a huge difference, and they publish their findings and their fixes, and like they really engage people, and I think that's built a lot of fans for them. But you ask any normal person to sit down in front of Plasma and start using it, and ask them to go into that control panel and ask them to do the most simple things, and it will they will not take to it. It's too much. It's for us as technical people or technically minded people. You don't have to be an IT person. You see that as like possibility. Look at the tool. It's a box of Legos. Look at I can do anything with this. It's amazing. And you said any other normal person that isn't of that mindset, and they gloss over. They're like, I don't even know my wife's one of those people who thinks she's going to break it, right? Like, I don't want to touch that.
well,
I don't.
That's a big thing.
I mean,
right there.
we're talking specifically about Plasma. She would. Like, and it would be proper broken too. Like,
I've broken every single installation I've ever had.
yeah.
Me too. Hey, you talk about Majid's talking about making it look like Mac OS and all that, and I've tried to do the same thing. Every single time I'd get 20 steps into like something would just crash, break, the
Well,
panel would blow
like
up.
the global menu thing that you tried to
Yep.
accomplish. Like, it'll
Yep.
work for the first 30 minutes, and then,
Yeah.
and then something else happens, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden the global menu is gone,
Right.
and you're like, wait a minute, where'd it go?
Yeah. And again, I'm not. This is not ever meant to be a rail against the developers. Like these are all specific use cases that you know commercial companies spend millions of dollars in focus groups and UI UX people and like I mean to get that right is not easy, and it takes a lot of effort, and that's why when people start saying, well, distros are irrelevant, that's why distros are still important because they're the people that are doing that work. They're the ones that are putting the polish on something. Hey, if you want to go with a default install of XFCE or Cinnamon or Plasma or GNOME and have zero polish on it, be my guest. You're going to have to do some work to get it to where you want it to be, probably. I mean, there are some people out there that use things vanilla, but not a lot. And when I go into a distro where I see that they've done some work on saving me some time, like that's the value, right? So
But there has to be a balance between that and limiting the user. So that was my issue when I was using macOS or iOS, in that some of the things that I wanted to do, I was not able to do because Apple had decided that we're doing things this way.
Well, I
and
think
and that might work for most people. I'm not denying that it probably does work for 98% of people, but it didn't work for me. And so that whole thing of subjectivity comes back into it. Is what is it in my workflow that I feel is the way that I want to work on these devices?
I think
the the
the GNOME developers would argue that every single option you give people is a bit of code that you have to maintain, and in time it turns into a game of fools because you're putting a lot of man hours into maintaining a some feature or some option that is only really appealing to a small number of people, but yet it has its fingers, it has its tentacles into so many things in the system that it has to be looked after and maintained, just as much as everything else. And so for GNOME, they would say that they would rather give you a coherent system that makes sense to them, I guess, and to the people that enjoy using it, and be able to maintain a desktop that will work exactly the way it's intended to work, because they,
that's the word, intentional, right?
yeah.
Intent. It's not let's try something. And listen, experimentation is another reason I love distros because you have some off the wall distro doing some wacky thing and you think
yeah,
that's bizarre, and then you actually try and you think, oh, okay, that's actually a cool idea, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
6 months later, a year later, it's in some other major distribution, and that's beautiful, like that. But at the same time, something like GNOME, where it's like I have to hope that every time they make a change, it's intentional. There was somebody who put some thought behind it and said, we're not doing this to piss people off. We're going to, this might break things or what, but it's something that we need to do to carry forward this ideal, this concept, this, whatever it is. And I, maybe I'm, foolish for giving them that much credit. Maybe that's not that intentional, but it certainly feels that way.
No, I think it
I,
is.
I think it is. Yeah, it is. But going back to Mac OS really quickly, I think people don't give it enough credit for how extensible it is. Everybody looks at Mac OS and looks at the desktop and says, this cannot be changed. But it is not true. You can get into the App Store and you can add things the same way that you can with GNOME and extensions. The same type
That's
of
true.
extensions that you can that you can add in GNOME. The same
But do
types
you
of
have a
things that you can
culture
do.
around the changing and around the
100%. It's part of the App Store. You just go right in and search for what you want, and you can find the type of extensibility in the App Store that you're looking for. If
Yeah,
you
but Leo,
want that app, here it comes.
Leo, they expect you to pay money for it.
I was
Oh,
just gonna
now
say.
that is the cardinal sin. That is the cardinal sin. Eric hit the nail on the head.
Actually, I had to laugh because Majid was, I forget what you guys were talking about. It might have been on mintCast instead of here, and I'm getting confused now. But it was like, how do you get around pay? Oh, it was your storage. You were looking for cloud
Yeah,
storage.
yeah, yeah.
And how much you had to pay for this versus that. And it was just funny because we're all of that mindset, like,
It should be for
$2?
free.
What?
Yeah,
$2? Are you crazy?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I think
come
I think
on.
that is an unwritten rule
Yeah.
of the majority that use Linux is that everything that you get should be for free.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that is the root of a lot of the problems that we suffer
Yeah.
today in
Yep.
Linux. Well, why isn't this the way that it should be? Because nobody's paying for it and it'll get done when it's done. But
Yeah.
you complaining about it on the internet is not going to help. Maybe
Listen,
you giving them $10 will help.
I think if anybody stepped back and looked at the totality of open source software, at the, when we talk about, uh, preeminent applications and the stalwart sort of things of open source. And yeah, those projects attract a lot of people. They also attract a lot of funding in most cases. But you also see these cases where there's this really fundamental little piece of technology that, essentially it's just some guy,
Yeah.
or and not to be just somebody, right? That's doing this really important work. And why? Because they need it most likely, or it's something that they've look at the guy who worked on Vim for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Brett
I'm sorry, I don't know
Muhlenov,
his name, but
right?
like,
Muhlenov.
it's like, why did he do that? He certainly didn't make any money, you know,
He
but
was scratching his own itch. He was solving a problem for
right.
himself, and it just happened to also solve everybody else's problem too, as long as you
Yeah.
knew where the escape key was.
again again, I think it's to do with the balance of it. Is it's absolutely, I also have no problem with paying for software, you're paying for services, somebody has to do it. And I can't expect everything to be free and on a plate for me. I think the if we're going to go talking about Apple, the endless commercialization that they have, where everything is 15, $20, I think that does rub people up the wrong way. And
Yeah.
you're kind of like, okay, it's fine, but like the courage port, like when they got rid of
Oh, sure.
the
But it
3.5
worked.
millimeter head. And look, man, if they just said, right, look, the reason we want to do this is because we want more people to buy Bluetooth headphones. That's fine. I would,
Yeah, but
that
that's
would have
not
been,
good marketing, though.
yeah,
Right.
wow.
Courage was marketing, and I think we can all agree on that. But how many phone manufacturers today have a 3.5 millimeter jack? I know they do. I know they exist. But what is their market share? What is
It's
that phone's market? That company's market share?
it's not
Google
it's not about
Pixel.
it's not about the market
Which
share
one
per
though?
se.
It's a 5A. It's
Okay.
the last one with the jack on it.
Yeah. What I've realized, actually, it's about not so much the market share, it's about the market in which you're selling it, right? So, for example, in India, a lot of these Xiaomi, Redmi phones, Oppo, budget 200, $300 phones, they all have expandable storage and 3.5 millimeter headphone
Yeah.
jacks. Why? Because people there are so price sensitive that they can't afford to spend another $100 to double the storage,
Right.
and they can't buy the Bluetooth earbuds, and they will have wired phones. So that category of phone in that market, because that's what sells, they still have those features. In the developed world, shall we say, where people do have the disposable income that they can spend 700-800,000 bucks on a phone, right, whether it's by contract or as a thing, they're more than likely going to be able to afford some good Bluetooth
Earbuds.
earbuds.
Yeah.
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 So there's no point engineering that into your solution because it's never going to be used. I mean,
Right.
as someone who, for a lot of my phones, I used to have a thing. Oh, I need to buy one with a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And then I realized after a while, when was the time that I actually used this? I don't actually use it that often. And then
You know, yeah,
when I started getting Bluetooth earbuds and then going down that rabbit hole, because that's one hell of a rabbit hole of
it
buying
is.
this one and that one and active noise cancelling and this and the Sonys do this and there's this codec and whatever.
See, and that's
So
why Apple makes that hardware, so you do not have to think about it, and people
Right.
buy that hardware readily. And I think so. So what you're driving at is that in whatever market it is, companies will make the choice that makes them the most money, but also that their customers will tolerate. That's it. That is
Yeah.
the algebra, that is the calculus of the situation. If the customers will tolerate it and we make a lot of money doing it, let's do it.
I think especially the Courage Jack was one of those. You got to push a little to get people to change, to realize that Bluetooth is actually the better choice. Believe it or not, and I was forever just like, I can't believe they got rid of those jacks. Like,
Not for
now on a
phone
tablet
calls, but I
device,
agree.
on a tablet, on a laptop, like I still think it has its place, because if you're doing professional audio and stuff, like you probably want some better setup than a Bluetooth headset. But I did the same thing, Majid. I bought a bunch of them, and I'm cheap, so I bought the $20 to $50 ones, and I found ones that I absolutely love. They last for like 6 hours on a single charge, and I do all of my podcasting, all of my listening of any kind now on this single set. And when they break, I'll buy another one. And for $50, they they're perfect. And I don't have a cord hanging off my head, so I can
Yeah.
do dishes, and I can be mobile, and it's not tugging anymore. The last time I had to wear wired headphones, it felt awful, and I was like, okay, I'm sold. I'll never need another jack on my phone again.
And
But
it's interesting that if since we're talking about Courage ports, the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack has still always existed on all the MacBooks and
right,
the MacBook
right,
Airs. Even when we were getting rid of everything and you just had two USB Cs, you still had a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, because, as you say, in that scenario, in that you know, for that use case, it made sense. And it makes sense, so that's why they do it. It's not like they've got an ideological problem against. They might say that they do, but they don't. It's like Leo said. It's about how to make the most amount of money.
for a while
Look,
there.
the
I think under Johnny Ives they had pushed a little too far on the skinny, thin
Yeah.
and light, where
oh, they
they
did. They
kind of.
came back on that
Oh yeah,
real
and
But
they
they
came
hard.
back,
did
didn't they?
as soon
Yeah.
as he was gone, and that tells you that they just pushed a little too far, and that's okay, because I mean that's what they were doing, and they were very successful at it. But I feel like when they went down to two, USB-C, that was in the dongle life and all that silliness, like. And I'm like that now. I have my laptop has a USB-A and a USB-C dongle
Yeah.
so that I could plug in all my stuff. But USB-C is just the superior port. It just is.
Oh yeah.
You can do
So
everything with it.
even on the framework that I'm on right now, I have
Yeah,
four. I've filled up all the little bits with USB Cs. There's four of them on there, but I still have to hang a dongle off it. There is not a
yeah,
single laptop in this entire world that would satisfy me. That
yeah.
would have with the amount of ports that I would need to be able to do what it is that
Well,
I
it'd
do.
probably be some kind of insane gaming laptop. Like,
But
You know
but
what? It would be the Framework 16 or
yeah,
50,
but
whatever the big one is.
Yeah, but
Six.
actually, you know what? That kind of goes back to your point, Leo, about, people want to be able to get things for free, as it were, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, most people don't necessarily need a VGA port and an Ethernet port and a HDMI port and, two USB A's and a USB C on their device. Because I remember getting really pissed off, like, why should I have to buy a £15 dongle just so that I can plug in my HDMI? And then after a while, you're like, what was I worried about? It's just
yeah,
15. It's just 15 quid.
I
And
know.
actually, I don't use it all the time. I don't
Right.
always connect my laptop up to my television, And for the
If
times
they
that I want to do it, it's great. Oh my god, there's so many. That's so many USB Cs. It's like a bunch of French fries. That is.
There's an Apple
It's
fanboy right there with all
No,
his
this is
dongles.
framework stuff. Get out of here,
Oh,
man.
okay.
Yeah.
These are all the little framework inserts. So,
Oh, okay.
but this is it. This is the Linux of laptops, though. It's that you
Right.
can make it exactly the way that you want. If you want a DisplayPort and an HDMI for some crazy reason, you can have that, and two
Yeah.
USB Cs on the other side. You can do. I mean, what do I got? I got USB A's. I've got the micro SD card slot. They're coming out with a full size SD card slot that I'll probably buy too. The DisplayPort. This is a 200 gigabyte SSD that fits
Oh,
directly into the
wow.
laptop. Right? They make the 1 terabyte version too. I'm sure a 2 terabytes coming soon, and then HDMI. But I still have a dongle for DisplayPort sticking out of it because I feel like it's kind of annoying to have to undo the USB-C to put the display port in when I
Yeah.
have a USB-C display port one, and I can just.
Well, and also if you're sitting at the same space all the time and it's literally just plug and unplug, like
Yeah.
whoop-de-doo, right?
Yeah.
If you have to
And
carry that crap around with you, that's when it gets annoying.
yeah, and that's y'all were talking about the 3.5 millimeter jack, and then you have to make a choice, but you don't. Like these headphones, if you dig headphones, these headphones I can detach right here, and right now it's 3.5 mil because it is superior. But the moment that I want to become mobile, I don't unplug from the you know the source side. I unplug from right here and then flip
Yeah.
on the Bluetooth
Yeah.
switch, and it connects to my phone, and I
That's
walk away.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, these are my Sony WXM fours, whatever thing fours, the one that regularly come on the top of best headphones or whatever. I got it on a deal, and I use them like that if I go to the gym or if I go out. But if I want to do this, this kind of stuff, plug it in and just use
Yeah.
it as a analog headphone.
Yeah.
Bill, are you
Yes.
okay? You haven't
Yep.
said a word in like
Yeah, I
10
know.
minutes.
I
I don't
know.
give a shit about Mac. I don't,
We're talking about headphones, Bill. Keep up.
this is
Wait,
kind
wait,
of
wait,
a
wait, wait. We're having philosophical conversations about UX and UI design. Mac is a case study. It's not
so
what we're actually talking about.
well. When it comes to headphone, like my phone does not have a headphone jack, which
How dare
I
you?
I
How dare you?
came to
No,
terms
he has
with.
the courage, man. He has the courage.
That's what
Well,
it
you
is.
can get. I've got USB-C headphones. Instead of buying the regular headphones, you buy USB-C headphones, and I found them to be the exact same price. And I got a little Y adapter to where I could plug those in and plug a charger in at the same time if I needed to. Most of the time, just hooking them up Bluetooth is because you've got just as much availability of the little bits and pieces you might need. If you need Bluetooth headphones, it's not like you have to order them straight from Samsung because nobody makes Bluetooth headphones. So I never really I understood kind of their philosophy behind or their reasoning behind removing these things just to make space for other components and that or at least that's what they say or they would say.
Yeah, they didn't, but that's beside the point.
Right. I mean, it was one of those things like, well, honestly, that is one less place dirt can get into and bugger up the whole system, I suppose. Um, but it's just, I felt like, yeah, you know what? Headphone jacks. I remember having a headphone jack on my Walkman. I used to walk around my hometown with, remember these things? You'd had to have a shoulder strap for them
Yeah.
because they would weigh down your pants, So that's been around. That's kind of the old hat, you know. I I just kind of choose to get on with it, I suppose.
And
Yeah.
I
The
think that's
world,
the majority of people too, right? I
Yeah.
think most people will trade quality for convenience every single time.
Because that is quality to them. The convenience is the
Right.
quality.
right. Yeah, I fought against a big phone for a long time because traveling and having to put this thing in my pocket. And I really enjoyed
I'll
having,
die on that hill. Small phones.
yeah. I just always loved like the SE sized phones were like perfect. I
That
had a
that
five.
that's the
Yeah.
tech reviewer's delusion, that everybody wants a small phone. When in reality, I mean, because I agree with you actually, yeah, Eric. For a long time I didn't want a big phone either, but that's not what if you analyze sales and if you analyze what sells, it's cheap big screens. That's what
I think it's
sells.
because so many people use their phone exclusively. I mean, and
Watch
you said it.
Netflix on them.
I think generationally there is some impact. So my daughter has a 17-inch used, albeit ancient Dell Inspiron, but it's a great computer. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It has Ubuntu on it, and like, whoop de do. And she has a tablet and she also has a phone. She will gravitate towards different devices for different activities, but almost always towards a handheld device, and almost never with her computer. Only if she absolutely has to. So, so you watching them, her and my wife use their mobile devices, And and my wife was the same way. She fought against this bigger screen, but because she uses it all the time, I started talking. I was like, why don't you want a bigger screen? Because I mean, you're always on your phone, and so now that she has a larger screen, I think. Again, just like with taking the headphone jack away and me now using Bluetooth, when at first I was just like, this is bullshit, like I think you just sort of go with, you know, someone else has put some thought into this and maybe that's a good idea. And maybe the waterproofing or whatever other excuse they come up with to, take something away. And I think that's it, right? Anytime they take something away, it just feels like, even if you didn't use it, even if you don't care, all of a sudden it becomes
How
like,
dare they take
Yeah.
this thing away without asking me first?
Yeah,
right.
They didn't.
exactly.
They didn't ask me if I was using this, and they
Wait a
took
minute.
it for
They
me.
took it away and they raised the price by $100. This is ridiculous.
Hold on.
You know?
The I think the crux of the issue though is that you don't have to pay that because they didn't take it away from you because the phone you still have has the jack that you want because you bought the phone you wanted the first time. And then
Yeah, but
the only one they took it away from is the one that you want to upgrade to, and that only becomes a problem. It
yeah,
only becomes a problem in the Android ecosystem, at least in mobile, because they're supported for like 18 months.
Oh, support
they've
is
gotten
better
better.
now. Come on, support is a
It's
lot
gotten
better
a
now.
lot
Yeah,
better
they've gotten
than
better.
it was.
But
Oh,
he
how
makes a
long
good
have they
point
been?
though.
How long did it take them to get to the point
Yeah,
where support is
I think
fine?
it was
yeah,
Project Treble that enabled the ability to keep pushing uh,
patches. Yeah,
patches. Because it's a separate
They
layer.
finally wore down the manufacturers, is what
yeah,
happened, and Snapdragon finally relented. That's why it.
right.
But I mean, say what you want about Apple, man, but the control of the hardware means that those phones will last until you throw them in the river.
Yes, that's true. And
That's true.
all their products will. I
And that's
mean, I
exactly what I would do.
And it'll still be supported in the water.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I think, to Majid's point about people, needing a communication device versus like the Western devices are status symbols. They are fashion. They are, whatever you want, however you want to describe it. They're form first and function second in a lot of cases. Why in the hell else would you make something that you carry around out of glass? It's stupid.
It's interesting you bring that up because every time I have a conversation with somebody, maybe tech, maybe not, and they're thinking, well, look to the future. We won't even have these phones. We'll have like what Iron Man's got, where you've got everything like a hologram
Projected
image.
out. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know because these phones have become at least as much about the fashion of carrying these things around, as they have the function. And I think for normal people, their phone is just one more thing they wear. And I'm not even sure people have realized how much, they buy a phone based on how it looks, or they get, or at least they'll get the
Oh yeah,
cases for it.
like that's the reason I see a lot more of the Samsung flip phones nowadays. And I see people who are like, "Oh, this looks amazing." Well, it's nearly always women, who are always like, "Oh, it looks amazing. This, oh, look at it. It opens and it closes and it opens and it closes, and I can put it in my handbag and this, that, and look, it looks so sexy." And you kind of like, okay, I mean, if that floats your boat, great. But you see, that's what it is. You see, it's the style, and
Mhm.
the fact that it looks cool and whatever. Personally
And
speaking, if I ever wanted to get a foldable, I'd get maybe like the Z Fold type, where it's folds out into like a tablet size. But obviously, there's a market for these flip phones because people are buying them. People
and
are upgrading.
it's really the only selling point that they've got at this point because the phones have been proper powerhouse devices for quite a few years now. Like I think my Note 10 Plus is, I think it came out in 2017 or 2018, and I've got no plans on replacing it because it's still
2019.
2019. Okay, well, see that is a lifetime. That's an eternity in terms of tech. But yet this device has got 12 gigs of RAM, 512 gig of storage built in, and uh, 8 cores, I think, at least 8 cores. So in terms of its usability and its power, they really don't have that to
Yeah,
sell them by anymore.
there's certain phones I found people really hold on to. I'm talking about in the Android space that people really hold on to, even people who are techies. One is that the Galaxy Note 10 and its variants. I find a lot of people have kept on hold of that. The OnePlus 6 and 6T. I remember back in 2017, discussing with a cousin of mine, and he was like, "I'm looking for a new phone," and I went, "Oh, this new OnePluses, they're really good and whatever." He's still got it. There's two doctors at work I know who I remember talking to him about, and they've still got it because it does everything they want them to do if they want to do with it, including the watching media, playing games, and all this kind of stuff. They just don't see the need to upgrade.
Well, that's a good point. Like, what is the differentiator at this point? Like, when there's a new model of phone beyond camera,
That's about all
right?
they lean on with
That's all
these.
that's left. I
Yeah,
mean,
that is.
and I will say
Battery
that
life
is
maybe.
definitely a differentiating factor because my wife has had the S20 and S21 now, and her camera is nowhere near as good as the Pixel camera. Like, it just isn't. And it's not that hers is bad. It is when you compare it, but if you're just looking at it on its own merit, it's perfectly fine. But like any kind of adverse condition, poor lighting, weird bunches of people, like where it's not trying to pick out a face, like it just the camera in the Pixel is, and truly, I don't like anything else about. Well, the camera and the call screening. If you have this, it has a nice
Yeah, the
Google
call seating
assisted
is
call
brilliant.
screen. Yeah, it saves me I don't have to answer since I've had this. I don't deal with spam call ever, none, never. So that those two things. But I mean, to that point, like if this thing just keeps getting updates, which it's supposed to get updates for the next 3 years, I think 2 or 3 years, like I have absolutely zero incentive to replace it unless I cared about having. And I think the Android world is much less about that, like the new. Like I guess some people might care. Like if
Well,
I
they
was
wouldn't
a
keep putting them out year over year if people didn't care. I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
mean,
just
I
as
think they
much
do.
about the new.
yeah,
They
I
do.
guess.
I cycle through phones every 6 to 9 months. Which is
But do you get
terrible.
new phones or no?
Yeah, generally I do.
Okay, see that's I don't I don't buy
I've
new
never bought a
phones.
new phone.
I have, but then I regretted it.
Yeah.
and then I go to Swappa. That's the
Yeah,
marketplace here. And someone had just mentioned a different one in the UK. But
some
anyway,
people
like
exchange.
yeah, I mean, why would I buy a brand new phone for $1,000 when I could buy it next year for 350?
Oh yeah.
It
Oh
just
yeah,
doesn't make any sense, you know?
that's because a lot of people are buying these things on payment plans and contracts and interest-free
Yeah,
credit and stuff
yeah.
like that, and then it's less of a hit.
Outlay up front.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Most people aren't buying, but the ones who do buy outlay like that are, as I said, often don't change. They're still using the same. There was an interesting article. You're talking about differentiators. There was an interesting article by Juan Carlos Bagnell. He's some gadget guy on YouTube.
Great
About
name.
he's fantastic. He used to work for Pocket Now, and then he
Okay.
became independent. Anyway, he did this article saying that 2019 was peak smartphone. It was a time when there was real kind of everything. Features were getting, it was increasing. There was lots of excitement. People were doing more and more interesting things. That was the year that Samsung Dex came out. The kind of laptop or desktop style up
Yeah, that
layer
flopped.
that they've got.
He might be wrong.
Yeah, no,
I
no,
use it
no.
all the time.
No, the point about that
I use
is,
it too.
yeah, the point about it is that the reason after 2019, the thing that a lot of features started getting taken away, or not so much taken away, but not developed. Android had it. There were at least three manufacturers with separate desktop modes in 2019. Yeah. Now, really, it's just basically Samsung Dex. I know Motorola have got one, but who buys a Motorola? You know. So, and other kinds of things that they would have, like iris scanners. I remember the Note 9 had an iris scanner. That was their way of biometric authentication. that has slowly disappeared. Nobody even talks about it. The Galaxy Note as a separate category disappeared. Now you have, yes, the ultras are basically the same thing, but it's under the S branding, isn't it? The S22 Ultra, the S23 Ultra. Note 20 was the last one. So what's happened is that there are few. It's got that law of diminishing returns. Manufacturers are putting new things into these phones, but they're not kicking off. They're not becoming the next big thing. So they're slowly, quietly, withdrawing them and pulling
Well,
support for it.
maybe they are becoming or have become appliances. Like, I mean, who looks at beyond very basic things like a television? Like how many separate features? And I mean, a lot of it is just going to come down to price, size. I mean, it's going to be just like basic features, right? Around like what an average person is going to pick out for a television or a refrigerator or anything. And maybe that's just sort of what this technology has become, is that
Yeah, I think
literally everyone, you talk about saturation. I look at it. So I spend a lot of time around older people by being in medical facilities so often. And 5 years ago or 8 years ago, like when I first got sick, almost nobody had phones out. Like the younger people, maybe, but like, the older generation would be reading a book or like, just doing something else. Now, today, almost everybody, and this isn't even an exaggeration, literally almost everybody, regardless of age or anything, are staring at a phone. And it's like, okay, literally everyone now has a smartphone. I mean, yes, I'm that's an exaggeration, but it's got to be pretty damn close at this point.
I think you're pretty much right on with that, because the phone come along and it broke all of the rules of, like, certain things being associated to certain demographics or certain age groups, what have you. And the phones, not only is the good things about the phones seemingly prolific across all of the demographics, the bad things as well. I'm on the road all day long, and I see, you'd be shocked to see how many people are texting and driving, or
Oh,
just
of course.
doom scrolling while they're
Yep.
driving, and there is
But
no
the
there's no
differentiator there,
age group
though.
to that either,
Right. Well,
because
hold on, though. Like, you could say the same about the TV, right? Like, the differentiator isn't the phone; it's the app they're using to do the thing. So there are differentiators. You just can't see them because they're using it on their screen. So you would see the younger generation using TikTok and things like that, and you would see the older generation using Facebook. But they're doing the same thing, obviously.
yeah.
But there are
Yeah.
differentiators there. It's just we're all staring at the glass.
Yeah, but it's not differentiators that you can market.
Oh, you sure can. You market TikTok all day long.
No, no. What I mean is that you don't sell a phone by saying this is a phone that's great for TikTok.
Oh no, not well.
No,
Yeah, you
Right.
kind
but
of do because cameras.
yeah, but I mean, like for
If you're a
example,
creator,
yeah,
right?
but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and how many people are creators really? I mean, Facebook tried making a phone, Amazon tried making a phone, it all went to pot, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, because they were trying to make a Facebook phone
yeah.
instead
Right.
of just a phone
Right.
that could run Facebook.
You see the difference there?
Yeah. It's slight. It's slight, but it's there.
Right.
How about a phone that
Well,
just runs Mozilla, that just runs Firefox? It
how about a
man.
literally
phone that
on
runs
That
Linux?
existed.
How about
I
a
wish
phone that
it
runs
worked.
Linux? Huh?
Ah, yes. So I listened with great interest to the last mintCast actually, and going through Linux on mobile devices because it's something that I've wanted to dabble into. The the thing that stops is, and Leo's gonna like this when I say it, the apps. The issue is
the
the
firmware.
application.
Yeah, because
Having
nobody wants a phone. Nobody wants a phone. Anything can do phone. You can plug in a physical phone over here and get phone, but nobody wants phone. They want apps.
Yeah.
And
the one WhatsApp.
can we run WhatsApp, native WhatsApp on the GNOME Fosh whatever? Can we run TikTok on it? Can we any of that? And any of that?
Right. And I think the only way that that's going to happen in the short term is kind of like, and Microsoft did it too late to have the ability to
I
run the
miss
Android
them.
apps.
They were good. They were pretty good, man.
when they opened up the ability to run Windows mobile apps as well as Android, those phones were actually pretty good.
Yeah.
They really were. But it was too little, too late.
Yeah, it was too late. Yeah.
And so I could see that being a potential means to sort of bridge that gap where you could have, a virtual machine or however, whatever the technology would be, container,
Yeah, I mean, a
yada
couple
yada.
did do that. I mean, a couple do that, don't they? Is it Selfish that does that? And there's a couple of others that have like you can run Android box with it and stuff like that.
Android and box, but
Yeah.
I think and box has kind of fallen to the wayside, perhaps.
Yeah.
The downside to doing stuff like that, though, is the overhead. You have to have a
Yeah,
faster phone to get the same
You
performance.
got another
as a
layer of
slower phone
abstraction between the
Oh,
app and the
absolutely.
interface.
running it natively.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're going to have, probably more, less performance, less battery life. It's all around going to be a probably overall worse experience from that perspective, except that then maybe and this is the thing, like, would having Linux on a phone device really make a difference? Like, is it going to matter? Like, you're going to already be looking at,
No.
so really, the thing I came to and what I was really trying to accomplish is Linux on a tablet device, because that to
Yeah.
me, I think, is that's where it sort of bridges the gap between a full laptop or a phone, and you can use a tablet as a media device, but you can also do some work on it if it's powerful enough and if the software allows you to do it.
And all
So
you
what
gotta
did you
do
do-
is log into Google Drive or Office 365 and do all your work.
So did you get a device then, Eric?
Oh, I almost bought that Star Labs Starlink.
Yeah.
You know what I figured out? So, okay, it was for something, right?
Yeah.
Just under 500. So if
Yeah.
you took that device, and it was fun, the specs on it were good without really changing anything. But then if you want the keyboard, it was another $100.
Yeah.
And then it ended up being close to $700 when it was all said and done. And I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, can't do it.
So the one that I would recommend is something that I've done, which is these Lenovo Mix series, which are basically Surface clones, and I was able to get one $200, 8 GB, 256 gig SSD, eighth generation Core i5. Came with the keyboard. I bought the pen separately, and then I put Ubuntu on it, and as a touch interface, GNOME is fantastic, I think.
I always
And
assumed when that first came out, I always
Yeah, it is.
assumed that that was the original intent. Because if you remember, GNOME 3 came out round about the same time as the Metro interface.
yeah,
for
I actually,
Windows.
I
Yeah.
actually, I actually remember writing an article for. Oh, there used to be a website I used to contribute to, Cool Smartphone in the UK. And I actually wrote an article because at that time, I'd bought a Lenovo Yoga. And I thought, let me try putting Ubuntu on it. And I put Ubuntu on it. And it was a convertible. And I was just like, this is fantastic. This works brilliantly. So I even wrote an article about it. I don't know if many people read it. But yeah, I always thought that GNOME was designed to be it can be used as a tablet, as a convertible, as a touch, or with a keyboard, etc. I mean, to be honest, nobody's really won that game, really, because Microsoft tried, and I actually think Windows 8, when it first came out, as a touch operating system, was quite decent actually. If all you used was touch, it was just the fact that if you wanted to use it as a normal computer, it was horrendous.
Well, because they had
And
no real window management.
well,
at
yeah,
first.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and
Until 8.1, yeah.
yeah, and you look and you see at the other end of the spectrum and at this end of the decade, Apple with the iPad Pros and the Magic keyboards and touch first, and they keep. What was that stupid advert they used to have? Oh, what's a computer? Flipping heck, with the girl typing away on her iPad, just annoyed the hell out of me. But anyway,
Because you weren't the target market for.
well,
who
no, I wasn't the
they were.
target
Yeah.
market, but the point is, Has anybody actually tried that? Has anybody tried that as an experiment? Got an iPad Pro with the keyboard and tried to do stuff like that. It doesn't work well.
The
It does.
problem is,
It does. It depends on
well,
what you're trying to accomplish.
exactly.
Because I've got one sitting right over there, and depending on what I need to do in the day, I don't have to open up the Mac.
So I just got an Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Plus, so it's the 12 and a half inch. Android and Samsung has sort of, with their One UI has made a lot of changes, good changes, I think, in my opinion, to Android. So if you're using it in tablet mode, you can, put windows side by side. You can even do like 3 or 4 windows split. And depending on what you're doing, like that's fine, but it's still small. It's still clunky. Like you can't really work on it. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of,
And again,
look at your email, and it's really weak. And so that's where Dex really transforms that thing. So you turn on Dex, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's like a computer now. And so
it's that point of workflow again, because we've got that workflow, we've got that way of doing things, isn't it? That we're used to doing it in that sense, and Dex helps with that.
Well, but I mean, okay, so I'm doing a lot of stuff. So as I complained on mintCast, like the thing that no mobile operating system has is a full desktop class browser, and I need that for what I do. And so that's where like it just fails me because it just doesn't exist. Unless I were to use Chrome OS on a capable enough device, which again is still going to be more expensive probably than I'd want to spend for that type of
But
device.
then you'd have to use Chrome.
Chrome OS is not it. I did not dislike the software,
Not OS, Chrome. Chrome
Well,
itself.
but
Yeah,
you can
Chrome is the
install
problem.
Firefox. You can install Firefox in there.
Yeah, but it's kind of like
Not always.
that's kind of like going to a steakhouse and ordering, the vegetarian. It's like, what was the point?
Yeah.
The point is that it's a mobile operating system that's lightweight enough to run on a less than, sort of desktop class system. Fanless. Let's just say fanless. That's pretty much the separating point, right? Does it need a fan? If it doesn't need a fan and it's still relatively performant, I think Chrome OS is actually not the worst option in the world. It's certainly
Careful
better
now.
than
That differentiate Mac has killed that differentiation now. You can
Yeah.
get away
Well,
with the MacBook Air and do professional work.
well. And I'm
Well,
not going to
guys,
argue the fact. Yeah, go ahead.
We got to wrap up here. We could go on and on for hours, but 3 of us got to get
That's
over
what 2 weeks from now is for.
Yeah,
All right,
we will.
all right.
Yeah, I know. We got to get over to Roundtable. I got to retool all this stuff over for that. But yeah, oh gosh, Majid, Eric, thanks so much for being on. You guys are
Thanks for
welcome.
inviting.
Yeah, you guys are
Yeah.
welcome every single episode because I think you guys really brought something special to the show. So, anyway, let us know what you think. You can comment directly on the website. We're on some of the socials. I've completely given up on whatever Twitter is passing itself off.
I'm
And-
enjoying the self-destruction of Twitter.
Oh,
I'm
it's just
I'm loving it.
crumbling. It is not.
It's
I don't even.
It's like I could overdose on Schadenfreude. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's nonsense.
Mastodon.
Yeah, we are on Mastodon, and I would like to get a little bit better use out of that. So yeah, hit us up on there. Email the show at linuxotc.org. Somebody will get back with you eventually. Maybe not. Anyway, we're gonna be back in 2 weeks. I hope. Until then, I've been Bill.
I've been
I've been
Majid.
Eric.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
He's been Leo.
What a spoil sport.
No way. Absolutely not.
And we
Yeah,
actually,
this is
you
what-
did do it. He caught
is a-
you. It's
yeah.
on
On accident.
record that you did.
On
Yeah.
accident. Yeah.
And
But
Yeah.
but don't
nothing
worry.
is
it's-
stopping me from taking it off of another one of the episodes.
There's
Yeah.
only one.
Sticking it-
There's
Yeah.
only one.
Or we could just say this is the artist formerly known as Leo.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
So, all right, kids.
This is the
thanks
most
for
unoriginal
watching.
idea. Goodbye.
Bye, folks.